I think I'm ready to get started. Joe, can I get a thumbs up from you? Okay, I think that's the thumbs up. We're gonna start with just doing a brief introduction of what Raytheon Technologies is. So we have like four major business units: Collins Aerospace, Intelligence and Space, and Raytheon Missiles and Defense, and Pratt Whitney. So we all do different things. We build commercial aerospace parts on one side, and then we actually handle defense contracting on the other. So we do a whole bunch of stuff, and we have like about, I think, 200,000 employees. So basically, a quick example that I share with everyone is some of the commercial aerospace engines that you, as a community, fly on, we have built those. So that's pretty cool. I remember working at Pratt & Whitney, which is the business unit I'm talking about. That was always something that made me really appreciate my job, was that I was helping people travel around the world and see the world in general. So that's pretty cool. And we also, on the defense side, for example, in San Diego, where I work out of, I help install equipment on Navy ships. So we make basically the lives for the Navy a little bit easier by enhancing systems and giving them onboard training and stuff like that. And when I say onboard training, I mean actually installing the systems so that they can train on board on the ships. So, you know, I'm glad that I'm helping people out still to this day. And I think I'm ready for the next slide. So kind of taking a departure from like all of the defense and business stuff, I think Raytheon Technologies has just really, over the course of like, 10 or 20 years, invested in their diversity and inclusion. So even to this year, we are still getting new systems in internally that help us become more informative of our diversity and inclusion efforts. So for example, they're going to be posting a dashboard where we can see the different demographics internally at Raytheon based on gender and background and ethnicity. So that's pretty cool. And they actually give us the opportunity with like a yearly budget to host events throughout the year to bring employees from different cultures together. So a lot of the ERGs, for example, are kind of ethnicity based. And then of course there's like the Ray Pride. And then we also have a young employee network group too, that I actually am the lead of in San Diego. So a lot of cool stuff. Joe, do you mind just pushing over to the next slide? So like I said, employee resource groups, basically the way it works is, I know specifically to the San Diego site, we have a council. So I think we have probably over 10 ERGs. So we have RAPA, which is Asian Pacific. We have Ray-Ban, which is a Black Employee Network. We have YesNet, which is the Young Employee Network. We have Ray Pride. We have RWN, which is the Women's Network. So what we basically try to do, as at least in our site in San Diego, and I know in El Segundo, which is in LA, we try to collaborate amongst all the different groups so that, there's employee engagement amongst the different groups. And then I know, for example, for me as a young employee, I try to get young employees and new hires like as involved as possible. So I've even done like a reverse mentoring panel, which gave young employees an opportunity to talk to executives and give them feedback of what we think our experiences are at Raytheon so far. So just, I think having that platform, as I'm about to share with you all, this wonderful platform that we have now, I think is just about educating and sharing stories and creating this sense of community. So I'm really happy to be here. And I think we're gonna actually now on the next slide get started so we can actually talk about the people that will be talking on the panel. So Joe, whenever you're ready, if you could go to the next slide. Awesome. So my name's Christian. I've introduced myself before, but I'll say it again. So I'm a systems engineer in San Diego, and I help build some of the equipment on the Navy ships. And Joe, who is basically my Ray Pride counterpart at San Diego, he's a senior manager. So he has people under him. I'm about 5 years into my career. We have Mario, who's actually, so just a disclaimer, we're all under Raytheon Technologies, but we are located in different spots. So for example, Mario, he works for the Digital Technology Leadership Group or business unit. So he actually, I would say, is an advocate for employees, which is pretty cool. So that's kind of his role. And then Kim, she actually works out of San Diego, and she's a systems engineer like me, but she's actually calling from Annapolis, Maryland right now. And then we have Bruce, who is also out of San Diego. And I would just like to briefly talk about, the diversity in this group, because we have Kim, who went through a procedure to treat her infertility. And then we have Bruce, which was, housing children, through a period of his life, and then went through the formal adoption process. And then we have Mario and myself, who don't have children at all. But what's really interesting is that we've all been able to kind of come together and share these stories and really find a lot of connections between these things. So I'm more than happy to stop talking and go with our first panelist. His name's Bruce. So Bruce, if you could unmute yourself, and then I'll start muting myself so that we can.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks so much for attending. I'm really happy to be with you all and share the story of my family. My name is Bruce Bauman. As Christian mentioned, I'm based in San Diego. I'm a software developer for Raytheon. I've been with the company for about 16 years now. I'm quite a lot longer than that in my career, towards the back end of my career. But anyway, my husband and I, we've been together for about 20 years now, and we're both come from large families. And even though, we come from large families, our families, as we were growing up, always had other people staying in our homes. I remember when I was a kid, we always had other people, not necessarily family members, but friends who stayed with us for extended periods of time. And my husband told me that his family was the same way. They always had people coming in and living with them for extended periods of time. So for us, opening our home was not something that was a scary thing to do. It's something that we had always done naturally or been part of naturally growing up. I remember our story started one time at Raytheon, one of our, in our Ray Pride ERG, which used to be called GLBTA. We had someone from the San Diego LGBT Center come in, and they were talking about a housing project that they had opened for LGBT teens in San Diego, homeless teens. And so Michael and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if we have this home, it's not a huge home, but we have some extra room. So wouldn't it be great if we could take, and house some of these LGBT teens and just provide a positive role model and some encouragement for them, after they've been displaced from their own families for whatever reason, and just give them a real sense of being, for however 4, 5, 6 years until they become adults and they can move out on their own. So that was our push to start this journey. So we contacted the LGBT Center and asked them about how we could participate, how we could become a part of helping LGBT teens. They referred us, instead of working with their homeless center, they referred us to an adoption agency in San Diego that, and when I heard the name of it, Walden Family Services, I remembered that I had seen Walden Family Services at San Diego's Pride festivals for a number of years. They would always have a booth there. And I always thought to myself, wow, that's interesting that, foster agencies are reaching out to the LGBT community to assist with fostering. So I immediately remembered who this foster agency was. So we contacted them and got some information on how to become foster parents. And all along in our journey, it had never been our intention to become full-time parents. We just wanted to assist others as we had done growing up. So we contacted this foster agency, and they were so excited to reach out to us and to welcome us into their circle. So we went through their training program. It was about, I think it was like a 10 or 12-week training program. We got certified. We had our home inspected, which was not a big deal. I've seen a couple questions, on that. How was the home inspection process? It's nothing to be concerned about. You don't have to change anything in your home other than, put child safety locks on, lock up medicines and sharp objects. So it was not a big deal for us. And with the foster agency, the plan almost unconditionally is that you're providing temporary housing for somebody, with the ultimate goal that that child will ultimately be reunified with their biological family. So that was our intention. That was our goal. As I mentioned, we never wanted to be permanent parents. That wasn't part of our long-term plan. So we became foster parents. We had a couple kids come, and they stayed with us anywhere from a couple months to a little bit longer. And then at one point, when we were not having any foster kids in our home, we still had to attend this agency's regular training. We went to a training class. There were some other foster parents there. And after the training class, everyone is out in the lobby chit-chatting, and there was a little girl, 4-year-old girl, who could not walk. She scooted around on her knees, and she came right up to Michael. We had never seen her before. She came right up to Michael, opened her arms up for him to, pick her up, and he picked her up, and that was it. So we started a conversation with this girl's foster mother, and we offered through the agency to provide the foster mother with occasional respite so she could go take care of, go to doctor's appointments or go to the beauty shop or whatever she wanted to do, and not have to worry about Priscilla. So for about 6 months, Priscilla would become kind of a regular at our home. Sometimes it would be like 3 to 4 days a week we would be spending with Priscilla in our home. Well, after about 6 months, Priscilla's foster father, who was in the Navy, was deployed out of state. So that meant because he was moving out of California, they couldn't take Priscilla with her. So they had to find a new foster home for Priscilla. And of course, the obvious thing to do would be to ask Michael and I if we were interested in becoming permanent foster parents. I'll say semi-permanent foster parents for Priscilla. Since we were already acquainted with her, we knew her, she knew us, it was a no-brainer. So Priscilla came and started living with us, still with the ultimate goal of reunification with her biological family. Over the course of the next year and a half, though, as time went on, it became more and more apparent that reunification was not going to be a reality. So we were then faced with a tough decision. We never had planned to be permanent parents, but did we want to, let Priscilla or take this opportunity? I don't want to say opportunity, but would we want Priscilla to go to another family who could care for her longer term? See, Priscilla has special needs. And those special needs means that she'll never live independently. She'll always require someone to take care of her. Wouldn't it be better if Priscilla would be placed with a younger family? Michael and I were already in our 50s. Wouldn't it be better for Priscilla if she would be placed with a younger family who could care for her more of her life? So that was a real struggle for us. And excuse me, I'm getting choked up now thinking about it. We eventually decided, that's really not an option. We'd become so attached to her that she just had to be a part of our permanent family. So despite all of our plans for our future, we made a 180-degree turn and decided that, we're going to adopt Priscilla. And that was that. We eventually went to court for the adoption process, and that was on her 7th birthday. So on her 7th birthday, she became part of our family, and life has never been the same since. And I can't imagine if Priscilla had not come into our lives. We would have done the things that we'd always talked about, traveling, living abroad. But there's just this incredible feeling of fulfillment now that Priscilla is part of our lives, and it's just a wonderful thing. So I would just encourage anyone who's even thinking of adopting or even just fostering, open your mind to it. Let fate take its course. Let destiny take its course. You can't always predict what your future's going to hold. So that's my advice, and that's the story of my family.
Awesome. Thank you, Bruce. I do want to point out something that Bree had said, which is it takes special people to foster children, and you're definitely one of those special people. I know for, when you're at a time when you want to travel abroad and stuff, and then you have this like whole different opportunity that you realize that you wouldn't regret, it's really powerful. So I appreciate you sharing that. And
Thanks for
I
the
just,
opportunity to share. I appreciate it.
yeah. And, we've been down this road before, so I'm happy that we're seeing each other again. And the chat is blowing up, and it's so cool because I'm trying to read what people have to say and also like take down some questions that we can get to later. But just the amount of support in this forum right now is really, really awesome. And there's like so much more to share. So without getting too ahead, I'm going to switch it over to Joe. Joe, floor is yours.
Thank you. Perfect. So hey everyone, I'm Joe Wall, and I went through a newborn adoption process in order to have our beautiful daughter here, Ellie. My husband and I, who's on all these photos, we've been together for about 16 years now at this point. And from the very beginning, we'd always kind of gone back and forth and wanted to have children and kind of what that process looked like, and always looking kind of like for that right time to start the process, because it certainly is a process to try to go through this journey. So we've done lots and lots of research, and we started finally looking into it more seriously around 2017. And so at that time, we chose to go with an adoption facilitator named Lifelong Adoptions. And the only base way I can kind of describe what that is it's almost like a marketing company that we hired to kind of help us through this process, right? They helped put together our adoption profile. They sent it out to individuals and agencies and people that they know that kind of help with adoptions. And they also kind of helped on the back end, right? So once we did connect with the birth mother, they were there to support us as we were looking to complete the adoption, but they're also there 24/7 for the birth mother to kind of help answer any questions that the birth mother might have, or to calm any fears that she might have, or to kind of work through any of those interesting situations to kind of hope that everything works well and completes kind of successfully. And so the interesting thing with the facilitator that they have is we hired them on for a 2-year contract. And so you're kind of putting your hope and your dreams and all of your everything that you have into them and hoping that kind of it works out in the end. And it's nerve-wracking and anxiety inducing, but they have a pretty high success rate. And so we were kind of glad that it all worked out the way that we wanted it to. And so about a year into the process, we did have a connection with a birth mother. It didn't seem great from the start, like things were very sporadic. And unfortunately, one day, she just kind of disappeared and didn't answer us and didn't answer Lifelong. And I think that that's probably a very normal process, at least speaking with other people that have gone through the adoption process, where sometimes, you're working with the birth mother, you think everything is good and it just doesn't work out, right? And so you've got to really kind of have a good support system in place that helps you process those feelings and understand that that's going to happen sometimes, and it's not the end of the world, and you just got to keep on going and keep on trying. And so thankfully we were able to connect with another birth mother. And at that point, it was very, very early on in her process. I think she was only about 2.5 months pregnant at the time. And so we kind of got to do the entire journey with her. We were getting sonogram updates at the time that we first connected and were talking. You know, she didn't know the gender of the child. And so we got the whole, here's the sonogram and that process. And so it was a very interesting journey to be able to have, you know, a full 7 months with this birth mother kind of going through this journey. Again, a little nerve-wracking because you never know what's going to happen. You never know if she's going to change her mind at the last minute. And so about 7 months in, we decided to take a trip out to where she lives. And so we're here in San Diego, California. The birth mother was out in Wisconsin. And so in January of 2019, during the polar vortex, we decided that was a wonderful time to take a trip to Wisconsin. We had to spend, you know, a few days out there meeting her and the entire family. She has other kids, so we were able to meet the other kids as well. And so I think that kind of really helped solidify the relationship and the bond that we had with the birth mother, which I think was really important, right? You can only get so much over a video chat or a phone call or text messages. And so it was really nice to be able to have that time to really dedicate to, we're here, you know, we got nothing else planned in Wisconsin. Let's hang out, let's talk, whatever you want, we're kind of here for you. And so following that, you know, we worked with Lifelong again and said, okay, so what's the process? And it's really interesting because it's really state by state on how things work. Being in California, if we would have adopted another child out of, let's say, Texas or somewhere else, they can do a adoption where agencies don't need to get involved, right? I've got a home study here in California, but I don't need an agency in the state that the child was born in because of the laws of that state. Wisconsin's not one of those states. They're very detailed in the process that they pursue for newborn adoptions. And so it meant that we had to hire an adoption agency in Wisconsin, as well as a lawyer there. We had our agency here in California and a lawyer here. We had to do extra training because it's now an agency to agency adoption as opposed to an independent adoption. And so there's a lot of different nuances that you find out along the way. But thankfully, everything kind of worked out well, right? So our daughter was born March 30th. It took about a week for the interstate adoption agreement to get signed, which is just an agreement between Wisconsin, the agency we had there, and California that says, okay, the child is allowed to leave Wisconsin and gets managed by the agency that is in California during the finalization process. And so after that week, we're able to leave. But there's still kind of this limbo area where every time we would want to leave California, you just have to ask permission until the finalization occurs. And so again, I didn't realize starting this process how long finalization took, right? I think Bruce mentioned that they were able to finalize the adoption of their child on her birthday. So our daughter was born on March 30th. We finalized the adoption just before Christmas. I think it was like December 19th of that same year. So it's a long and drawn out process. We were happy to finish it up in 2019. It was our kind of Christmas gift to ourselves. It took a little bit of begging to get us on the docket for that date, but I'm glad that we did. And then like another interesting nuance, right, with adoption, and this is in our situation, but probably sometimes very similar, is the child was not assigned a social security number at birth. And so we had to wait until the finalization occurred in December to then request a new birth certificate. And you're requesting the birth certificate from the place that she was born. So although we're here in California, Wisconsin was the one that had to then produce a brand new birth certificate. So it was again, a long process that we didn't really understand when we went into it, but that you find out these little nuances that, you know, sometime later we finally got the birth certificate, then we're able to get a social security number for her. And those are little eccentricities that you have fun explaining to your HR reps, and benefits of yes, I know I have a dependent and I know you're covering her medical. However, I don't have a social security number. I'm happy to provide you all the paperwork you want to show that, yes, this is all on the up and up. But it's just an interesting process, it's an interesting journey. I know personally, we took advantage of both the tax credits that the government offers, as well as Raytheon does offer adoption benefits. One interesting thing with that was that it was the adoption benefits from the company only applied post finalization. So I don't know if that's planning on changing in the future or if other companies do things differently, but that was just kind of a, once you finalize, then you're able to apply for those benefits versus kind of while you're paying out the money in the process. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to pass it on. That way we can get to questions hopefully at the end.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I've just tried like recording some of the questions that people are posting, and it's really interesting as I'm reading the chat that a lot of people have like a shorter time frame. So it's just, you know, I think at one point someone was asking, you know, what's like the normal time frame and stuff, and it looks like it varies. And then I also saw someone else talk about how Target was, or they were starting like an adoption assistance program. So I'm really glad, Joe, that you talked about what Raytheon covers and like how they kind of did it, especially after post finalization, because I think that could like actually make or break, you know, a plan to, you know, adopt. So
yeah, it's certainly it varies greatly because it's all about, you know, how long it takes you to connect with the birth mother and how far along they are, right? So we know people that connected within a month or two and the birth mother was already 7 or 8 months pregnant. Very different than our situation where it was about a year and a half plus then the 7 months, right? So it's, and I've heard things are getting more difficult lately just because of the low birth rates during COVID. I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, those are just kind of anecdotally things that I've been hearing. So.
Oh, wow. That's actually a really good point, which is like totally against my mom's prediction of us going through like another baby boom, because she's funny. I want to touch upon the chat of, I see, while there's a lot of, you know, queer families calling in, I really love to see, you know, cisgendered, straight, however you want to identify. It seems like there's just like a really diverse group that's listening in on that. So that's pretty awesome. I know, just to briefly talk about my experience, my mom is pansexual. So she actually, and this is how actually we all kind of connected as like a group and why we're all doing this to share these stories. My mom's pansexual and she's dating women now. So that has been a shift in our relationship, and just going through the growing pains with that. As also for someone who identifies as queer and gay, it was really, I wouldn't say challenging, but definitely just shows families make up more than one kind of rule. So I really appreciate, Joe, for you sharing your story. I want to move it over to Kim, which I think I love listening to her story about how she was treated. So I'm very excited. Kim, whenever you're ready, if we could go to you.
All right. Thank you, Christian, for being our moderator here. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone, and reading the chat has just been a real privilege. It's great to be in the company of so many wonderful, loving families and parents. So thanks for being here. My name is Kim. My wife is, her name's Jennifer. She's an attorney in San Diego. And we had a little bundle of joy November of last year. Her name is Viviana. And so our story is probably a very common two-mom story. We got married in 2016, and we had always wanted, family. We wanted to have kids. She comes from a bigger family than I do, but we're both Latina, and we said, oh, we want to have some kids, and we really connected on that level of that's in our near future, in our plan, five-year plan, I think it was then, but became a 10-year plan. Both working moms. Like I said, she's an attorney. I have this awesome engineering job at Raytheon in San Diego, but I also have the other hat, this other job that I do every month. I'm a Navy reservist. So I, at the time, was a lieutenant commander in the Navy, a surface warfare officer in the Navy. And so I did that basically kind of part-time. And I would say in the last 5 years, that's been more my full-time job than my part-time job. But that's just due to opportunities that came up. I was voluntold to go forth and support counterterrorism missions. So that's what I did. And I'll just throw this out there for Raytheon that they've been super supportive. It's a wonderful company to be a reservist at because they're super supportive of us and our families. And so they did not have a problem saying, okay, go ahead, serve your country. We'll support you and your family while you're overseas. And so shortly after I got married, that was me. I deployed for a year. I went to Djibouti, Africa for a joint tour. I had a very successful tour over there, but it was definitely a long time away. Came home and started talking seriously with Jennifer about, hey, how are we going to have this family? How are we going to do this? We just saved up a lot of money from this overseas deployment, right? So we started finding out from other friends of ours, other military families, LGBTQ families, hey, how did you go about this process? And thankfully, there's a lot of resources in San Diego to ask those questions of. And so they started recommending sperm banks and fertility clinics and you name it. And so it was really nice to get all that information for planning purposes. Because then I got called up to go on another deployment. And so say I was home for maybe like a year and a half, and I got called up again to go serve my country and go overseas again. So I said, all right, well, we'll save up some more. We'll actually plan this out, get stuff done. Obviously now I'm not the one that's going to carry first because I'm older, about 6 years older than Jen is. You're it. And we were both open to carrying, so thankfully that was not a big deal. So she said, all right, I'm going to try while you're gone. I'm going to get everything set up and ready to go. But before you leave, we got to pick a donor, right? We got to find out where we're going to get the other part of this process so we can have that ready to go. And so we went to a sperm bank in San Diego that was recommended to us. We went through a list of donors. We pay a little bit more money to look at some pictures because, we want to have a beautiful baby too. And we want to be a little bit picky about who we selected. And so I think I went through maybe a couple of pages of folks, and I knew right away one just stood out to me. And my wife was like, wait a minute, don't you want to look at more pages? She definitely takes a lot longer to make decisions than I do. I'm Navy, so I'm like, go, go, go. And I really felt that was the right choice. So she took a little bit longer to get there, but eventually she agreed with me. And she thought that that description of that person, the donor, was a lot like me. So it was kind of funny how we came to that decision, that conclusion. And so, I did my part. I made that decision. I helped her out with that. And finally she agreed. And so I left, went on deployment overseas with my unit. And during that time, we were lucky because my mother-in-law would come down to help out quite a bit from LA. So my wife's family's from Los Angeles area, and we were living in San Diego. So just a couple hour drive away, which was nice. So that support system was there for her while I was gone. And so my mother-in-law went with her to her visits to the fertility clinic, and then to a few of the IUI procedures, which is how we eventually got pregnant. And so, yeah, this IUI procedure is for infertility. That is true, but obviously for same-sex spouses or same-sex partners, we need that treatment just to get pregnant, right? So that was a procedure that we underwent. And so there's a lot of timing involved in that. And so she would say, all right, I'm ovulating, mom, come down, I'm going to pick up the sperm and we're going to make it happen on this date. And so it was all this really critical timing piece. Thankfully her job was really flexible, allowed her time off to go do those appointments. And so she tried 3 times while I was on deployment. And, unfortunately we're all unsuccessful. And that was hard to hear as a deployed spouse because they were really challenging times or really down times for her. She thought, oh, what am I doing wrong? Really feeling guilty and trying to understand what else she could do to improve her success in getting pregnant. And so that was a challenge for us as a couple, just going through that process and the highs and lows. So it sounds like that's very similar across the board with other families trying to get pregnant and whatever process that you undergo. It's just a lot of patience, some money and time, obviously, and just being there for each other. So we get a lot closer because we went through this process together, of course. And so fast forward, I get through a successful deployment. My unit comes home, and this is all right before COVID hit. So this is early 2020. My unit comes home around February 2020, demobilized in Virginia on the East Coast. And so I come home, I think the end of February, beginning of March is when I came home. And thankfully, she had already scheduled another appointment to go to the clinic and do another IUI procedure. So everything was set up, ready to go. She actually asked me to go pick up the sperm. So there's a little picture in here of our canister in a seatbelt next to me in the passenger seat. So that was an experience, going to pick that up. That was my first time doing that. And then I went with her to the clinic to go through the procedure. And the clinic was super nice, very awesome nurses, very attentive, very nice. No difference in treatment, I would say. I didn't notice anything weird about, our families versus others. So super cool experience. Again, I didn't know what to expect, and go in there for the procedure. And it was just a lot of love between us. Just a strong connection in that moment, a lot of love just for each other, and the possibility that we could get pregnant was there. There's a lot of excitement too, I would say. So she underwent the procedure. I was there. I could see, what was happening on the screen when it happened. And they said, all right, we're done. It was very quick. I was like, oh, okay. We're all done. It was like a few seconds and we were done. So just held each other for a little bit. And then, basically that was it. It was just kind of a waiting game for a couple of weeks before we could do the test and verify if we're pregnant or not. So fast forward a couple of weeks, I'm home. COVID hit, so we're all home together, working from home. So which ended up being, kind of a blessing here in this case. And we got the good news that we were pregnant, and lots of happy tears were shed. And it was way later when we figured out names and all that, but it was such a fun journey to become pregnant. And I was just so happy that I could be there for that moment of conception with Jennifer. So fast forward to today, I can't believe it. She's going to be almost a year old. You can see some really fun pictures of Viviana and us enjoying time here in Annapolis. I teach at the Naval Academy. That's my alma mater. So it's kind of fun being back here. But yeah, she was born out here, little Navy baby. She loves the water. She loves the outdoors. She loves RBG. You can see that that's her hero too, just like my wife. They're matching over here. They're little twins. So we are just so happy to have her in our lives, and we can't remember what life was like before her. So thank you for listening. That's my story.
Yeah, thank you, Kim. Long live Notorious RPG. So I was just, trying to catch up on the chats and stuff, and a couple of things that I just want to mention. Someone had said, listening to these stories reminds me of the Blue's Clues Pride Parade segment that that Nina West had hosted, which is hilarious. But also, someone else had mentioned, families have different structures and they should all be celebrated. So I hope that this forum kind of, emphasizes that we all come from different backgrounds, and we're all celebrating those different backgrounds, because that gives us an opportunity in the future to open up services to other people and people that are struggling with other things. So I think hopefully, like in the long run, as we share these stories, that really opens up legislation to make services like this more accessible. So that's kind of my little zip of what I think so far. I want to move on to Mario, who does not have children, but I promise you, he has a great story to tell. So, Mario, if you could please, the floor is yours. I will mute myself.
Thank you so much, Christian. I appreciate it. And it's really an honor to be here and speak to all of you. So really, my story revolves around my advocacy. So I am an advocate for fertility equality. I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do because it personally affects me. And the stories I hear and the work that we do, it just is incredible. I really started off because I remember when I was coming out to myself, the biggest thing for me was that I felt like I was choosing between being myself and having the family that I pictured in my life. And I felt like I had to weigh those two out. Which one do I want? And I couldn't do it. I couldn't not be myself. And I also could not have a family. And so I came out, and that weight was still on my shoulders. It's always been there. But I'm the kind of person that I couldn't not do something about it. And so, I used to work on Capitol Hill, work for the government or working in political offices, and it made me more astute to kind of getting in there and working on policy. So I reached out to representatives, federal and state, and I looked into what we can do. I learned a lot. I learned that the average cost of surrogacy is in the six figures, and that so many people are cost preclusive from doing that. And even with adoption, you find the same situation where it can be cost preclusive to so many people. I always say you shouldn't have to choose your career to choose your family. And I firmly believe that. And so I connected with a lot of legislators, and I'm so grateful that's Liz Linehan, one of our state legislators, with me in that picture. She's incredible. And we worked together to produce legislation that is targeted to really bring this to the forefront, really bring fertility equality into legislation. So what we're doing with some of our legislations is to really get down and make sure that mandates are put into place that take the costs from right up here where you have like houses and bring them down here to where maybe we have like a nice Rolex. And I think that it's super important to do that. So what happened there was people kind of started to notice that. They started to notice momentum building around our legislation, things like places in Tennessee and Massachusetts came about because of what we were starting to push. And we were noticed by the New York Times. And when they contacted me, it was actually really early in the morning. I think it was like 8 a.m. on a Sunday. And I pick up the phone and they're like, "Hi, this is so-and-so from the New York Times." I'm like, "No, it's not. I'll go back to bed." But no, I stayed on the phone with them, and it was a great experience. They put it was myself, a few other gentlemen, and Andy Cohen from Bravo, who you might know, in this article talking about the issues that kind of come along with the costs of fertility treatment for LGBTQ plus couples. And it was amazing. And this, I think, was really one of the biggest starts for fertility equality, right? Moving forward, so many more pieces of legislation kind of came about. And I'm really proud of that. But when it comes to the workplace, after this article came up, one of the questions that they asked me was, "Hey, you work at Raytheon, what are your benefits and what do you do with this?" And I got really freaked out by that question. And I really had to disclose it to my manager that I was doing these types of advocacy on the side. I was so nervous, right? I wasn't sure how the company was going to process that. And they were incredible about it. And we really are an incredible company in that way. Is they said, "No, can you help us? Can you talk to us about our policies?" And I was like, "Okay, so I'm still here. And let's do that. Let's absolutely go ahead and figure that out." And so we worked together. And now we have some of the most progressive fertility policies in our industry. And I'm so proud of that, is that we now cover things like egg and sperm donation. We cover things such as IUI and IVF in ways that we didn't before. And this is the stuff that I was working on my legislation, and the company was able to do that for us first. And I'm so thankful for that. Moving forward today, we have a great team of advocacies. I started the organization Affordable Families, which you can go to affordablefamilies.com and see more about what we do. But we work to push that legislation. We work to consult with anyone looking to do that. And I actually have a great announcement that I haven't shared with any of you before that I'm really excited to share with you, is that us in Connecticut over here with Affordable Families are ready to introduce one of the most progressive pieces of legislation in the United States around fertility care that will take the costs from surrogacy to be in the six figures to guarantee under six figures, by ensuring mandates that will ensure that cost of fertility for a gay couple match the cost of fertility for that of any other couple composition. make sure that certain types of things like egg and sperm donation are covered by employers, to ensure that there's non-discrimination across healthcare when it comes to this, and also giving things such as benefits along the way to ensure that all insurance care is covered equally. I always say, I don't get a gay discount, so I should also pay the same price and receive the same benefits. So that's what we're looking to do together. My story is hopefully far from over, and seeing all of you, you wonderful people with your families and beautiful people that you're with and all, it makes me so excited and excited for the future that I hopefully will follow from this. And it gives me hope that that pressure is a little bit lightened, right? Seeing that it is possible to have both, being yourself and also being in this community. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. It's an honor to speak with you all. And questions are my favorite part, so I'm happy to jump into that.
Yeah, and it's like so funny because I'm like trying to listen to you, but also I'm like, oh my God, these questions. So I think the best way to do this is just, there were some pertinent questions that I saw that I think all of you could either touch upon, or I'll call you out as panelists individually. There was one in particular that was for you, Mario. It said, how can I influence my company to include reimbursement for stepchildren, which a lot of LGBTQ plus family adoptions technically fall under, when it's the only type of adoption not covered by the adoption and surrogacy support program?
Beautiful question. I love this one. And the answer for that one is because it's in their best financial interest. And right, that doesn't sound like it works, but it does. A lot of companies have what's called a self-insured model, where they actually pay out claims to their to the insurance provider. The insurance provider facilitates it. And what you'll see is when you have a company like Progeny is a great example of a company that equally distributes fertility coverage. It's, I think, I can't spell it. I'll get you the link. But what they do is they equally distribute insurance policies. And what actually results from that is lower costs in delivery, lower costs with medical issues, which are actually higher than the cost of infertility treatment themselves. A few days in the NICU is astronomical compared to IUI. And so what we found is paying up front, investing in equal insurance coverage up front, saved them so much, millions of dollars in the rear. And so I suggest going from that standpoint. Progeny is a great company to look at their models, but when you look at it, investing say $70K into a insurance policy for an equal LGBTQ couple to proceed with their building their family can save you six figures in the end, mostly because a lot of these types of procedures, IUI and IVF, sometimes can result in triplets or twins, which can be great if they're intended, but sometimes you'll do multiple implantations at once, and that really raises the complication rate. I have an associate that had triplets because she was trying so hard to get pregnant, and actually only one of them actually would survive the pregnancy. So it leads to happier families, larger families, and better finances.
Awesome. If you don't mind, I think I can even answer this for you because James had asked, is the legislation to reduce the cost of surrogacy, he mentioned, at the federal level, or how can they follow the legislation that's in Connecticut? I imagine that you said it was just for Connecticut, right?
Yes, this one is just for Connecticut. It's a tougher thing to cover federally. A lot of insurance policy is statewide. But in your own state, I implore you to do what you'd like to do. Also contact me if you want help. LinkedIn or Affordable Families, I'm happy to help out. This is state, not federal.
Thank you, Mario, for going further into answering that. I really appreciate it because you're the expert. I'm not. I'm here to maybe just support Connecticut a little bit because I used to live there, and they're doing some pretty good legislation right now. So I do want just a quick. I see Mikael from Sweden. That's really cool that you're chatting in, and you said the family section of the Pride Parade has grown into one of the largest sections, which is awesome to hear. I just wanted to talk about that. And then From Justin, I see that, I don't know if we're going to be able to answer this, but maybe someone in the chat could help. Anyone else in Texas who has gone through or is going through one of these processes? I get nervous that the state will make it harder for us and would love to connect or be appointed to Texas specific resources. So I felt like that was just something that I wanted to highlight because, if we can help people out, I would love to do that in this forum as well. Awesome. Okay. So, yeah.
Resolve.com would be your go-to for fertility-related resources in Texas. They have a breakdown by state for state laws regarding fertility treatments, how equitable they are, and what you have are entitled to. Resolve.com.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you, Mario. And Kim has kind of answered it in the chat already, but I think a question that I just wanted to ask all of you is how do you plan on talking to your children when they're old enough to understand that different relationships exist? I saw Kim had mentioned books, which is amazing. I love that idea. But I kind of wanted to start off with Joe because I would love to hear what he was, I would love to hear what he had to say about that.
That is a wonderful question.
Wonderful.
So I think that we're trying to normalize things and just kind of have conversations just kind of as she's growing up, right? She's only 2.5 now, almost 2.5. And in San Diego, there's a rather large LGBT family kind of group that's been kind of forming over the past couple of years. So she's really been growing up with families that look like hers, families, two moms, 2 dads, 3 moms, very mixed families. And so I think that having that kind of environment where she's growing up seeing families like her own and being able to normalize things, I think that kind of would take a little bit of that away. So as far as the eccentricities of how we're going to discuss it, I'm not positive yet, but I think it'll be a process.
Awesome. Okay. Kim, I saw that you answered it in the chat, but do you want to just say anything through audio?
Oh no, I think just right now it's education, it's reading books, it's seeing other families. We just recently started going to a church that's LGBTQ friendly, and that's a little bit new thing for us to venture out and find that kind of a community. And they exist, and it's pretty neat. And some of my coworkers from the academy who teach there also attend that church. So it's kind of neat. They have they're usually cis families with kiddos, but it's nice for her to see other families out there too, and hopefully other families that are LGBTQ in the community as we kind of get through this other phase of COVID here. So, but yeah, I'm totally open to hearing other best practices from families on how to educate our kids and what's worked well for you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. If you guys want to just start putting in the chat, I think books is a great idea. If you have any books off the top of your head that you wanted to share, maybe you could put them in the chat. That would be pretty cool. Bruce, do you want to touch upon any of the experiences that you've had personally about maybe how you would want to introduce Priscilla into the wide world of couples?
Well, we're kind of in a unique situation in that Priscilla is moderately, actually probably severely developmentally delayed. She doesn't speak. She has a very difficult time understanding anything except very basic commands. So we're kind of in a unique scenario where we really don't have to, it's not something that we have to consider explaining to her why she doesn't have a mom, who actually we're still in contact with, and we still take Priscilla to visit with her biological mom occasionally. We're not in that situation, and I don't know if maybe that's a good thing for us, so we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because it's almost like that gives you somewhat of like a safety net. But I think Sammy King had made a really good comment that there's no age to start talking about it. It's constantly part of the conversation.
Very true.
From the beginning, which I thank you, Sammy, for mentioning that, because I think that's a really, really important way to categorize it. Okay, so just going through the chats. Oh, it looks like there's a couple of books in my mother's house. Wow, yeah, that's really awesome. There are a couple of other questions. I think some of them were answered, which is great. I love that we have that kind of community so far where people are answering the questions for me. I have a couple of like general questions that I can go over too. So I guess for Mario, I guess this is more of like a personal question. So with your status as part of the LGBTQ plus community, and I'm sure I can even touch upon it too, because I don't have children yet, how has that affected your perception of wanting to have a family?
And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, Christian, but
Yeah, absolutely.
that, I think that it really shaped me a lot after I came out to myself. I think that I defined so much of myself by the fact that I needed to prepare for it. So I have savings accounts, all hopefully ready for when this expense might come up. I put a lot of thought into the legislation, and also, I make it a part of who I am in the sense that um, I think I've chosen parts of my life to revolve around it, making sure I'm financially set up to weather that financial storm when it comes, and also maturing myself to the point where I can not just be a good person for myself, but also a good person to influence children and to be someone that wants to be a partner to. My fantastic boyfriend Thomas has been a great support, and it's also not easy when you meet somebody and they also just tell you, hey, by the way, I do a lot of fertility stuff. um, that's not
Wow.
always the most, it's like it's a fun topic, but sometimes it scares people off. And he's still here. It's been almost 4 years, so he's been fantastic, and I have to give him props. Um, but it did shape me. I think that I would still be where I am today career wise, but I think that a lot of people have to, in some part, choose their careers to be financially able to take on that responsibility. What do you think,
Yeah.
Christian?
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that you're mentioning that because I'm, if anything, on the other side of the coin where, I'm a young professional, I'm living my best life out here in Southern California, and it's maybe the culture, but it's funny because, when I talk to having children with my friends, it's always like a 10-year plan. It's never something that we talk about while we're in our 20s. It's something that might happen when we're in our 40s. So I feel like, or 30s. And it's just, I feel like that's something that I've been able to really connect with my community here is, kind of coming up when a time that you're financially independent and you can, afford to have an adoption. And for, me personally, I have a great family support system. So my sister, and this has been years ago, has offered to give my partner her eggs, if he wanted to, if we wanted to use her eggs so that there's some genetic line in the family, that would be really cool. And it's funny because I go back and forth between wanting children because I think about, I'm self-sufficient, I'm self-responsible. I already feel like the people in my life are sufficient enough to give me like the joy that I need. So maybe I'm that caterpillar that is going into hibernation soon before they turn into a beautiful butterfly and want children. And because that train has not approached me yet.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
that's a great point, Christian, because
yeah.
you shouldn't have to worry about it now. You should be
Yeah.
able to live your life and think about children when you want to think about children. I think the tough part
Yeah.
is that we don't have that
Absolutely.
luxury, and we deserve it.
Yeah, I think societal norms, as we're coming up past like the new millennium and stuff. For example, my mom had me at like 27 and I'm the youngest. And I think obviously those norms have changed where now, especially in the LGBTQ plus community, where there's couples that are not having children because they want to travel, because they want to be self-sufficient, because their friends might provide that level of intimacy that they're looking for. It's all just, I think, you know, I would say pro-choice / the freedom to choose what's good for you. And, I would say a really good influence is probably Joe and his family, because the off times that I've spent with Joe and his family, it has just brought me so much joy. So I appreciate Joe, all the times that we hang out, all the times that I get to see Elle. So it's really appreciated, especially as part of the community too. Wow. Okay. So I think we're approaching our hour mark. Does that mean we have to close this out? Damn. Okay. I could talk to you guys forever if I really could. I really appreciate you all listening into this conversation. This is actually being recorded too. So, we're going to be able to come back at this if we need to. And I really appreciate the supportive energy everyone brought in the chat and through listening, because there seems to be so much hype on this. And to be a moderator and even be a participant in it, I am incredibly grateful for this opportunity, and really I'm internally grateful for the panelists that showed up and talked about their personal life. I think still that's not always easy. So for us to have this platform is really, really amazing, and pretty much closes out my year on such a good note. So I really appreciate you all for participating in this. And yeah, until next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.